She handed me a crumpled $20 and called it freedom. Then she got in a cab and left for Europe. No plan, no babysitter, no adult coming back at night. Just a dead credit card on the counter and $20 for survival. My name is Riley. I had just turned 11. She smiled when she said I was independent, like it was a compliment instead of a warning. Like independence was something you give a child instead of something you earn. The front door closed and the house went quiet in a way I had never heard before. Not peaceful, empty. No one else was coming. No one even knew I was there. I stood in the kitchen holding that $20 bill, waiting for it to mean something more. Waiting for it to turn into a plan. It didn't. She called it maturity. I learned to call it abandonment. That was the summer I learned how long food could last when no one was checking. How hunger stretches time. How silence settles in after someone you trust decides not to come back. And when she finally did come back, dragging that same suitcase through the front door, the first thing she said wasn't hello. It was, no, this can't be happening. But it already had. And by then, I wasn't just the child she left behind. I was the one who had been watching. Everything she left had turned into evidence. By nightfall of day 1, I'd already stopped pretending this was a game. The countdown had started, and every day that passed was another entry. In the case I didn't know I was building. The first 10 minutes I stood by the kitchen window like she might change her mind and come back. She didn't. I looked down at the counter. The emergency credit card she'd tossed there glinted under the light, like a trick coin in a magician's act. She said I could use it for food. She didn't say it wasn't activated. She didn't say I'd need a PIN. I found that out while trying to order dinner from my phone. The app rejected it again and again and again, so it was just me, one dead card, one $20 bill, no plan. Day 1, I made it a game. I cut sandwich bread into quarters to make it look like more. I spread peanut butter so thin it became transparent. I told myself real survivors made things stretch. I even whispered it into the silence, I'll be fine. But by day 3, I stopped pretending. The fridge had half a jug of expired milk, a few carrots that had gone soft, and 2 slices of cold pizza that tasted like glue. The pantry was worse. One dented can of soup I couldn't open without slicing my hand. A bag of cereal that was mostly dust. A single unopened jar of olives I hated. I left the TV on for noise, just so the walls wouldn't creak so loud. I sat cross-legged on the floor and flipped through my mom's emails on her open laptop, scanning names that meant nothing to me. Names she chose to answer instead of me. That's when something changed. I picked up my notebook and turned to the first clean page. I didn't write Dear Diary. I wrote one word in capital letters, evidence. Underneath it, I started listing what she left behind. Left alone at 11, $20 only. No working card, no food plan, no adult check-ins. It didn't make me feel better, but it made the fear feel organized, labeled, documented. And maybe that was the beginning of power. That night, I filmed my first clip. Just a few seconds, no filter, no acting. Day 3, I'm still alone, I said into the camera. Then I locked my phone and curled up in bed with a blanket that didn't feel warm enough. By day 5, hunger wasn't just a feeling, it was a fog. And under that fog, something else had started growing. Not panic, not fear, but anger, cold, steady, and sharp. On day 5, I found myself laughing. Not because anything was funny, because I was dizzy. because I had eaten a handful of dry cereal for breakfast, a few spoonfuls of olive brine for dinner, and nothing in between. I wrote another line in the notebook. Day 5, still no call, not even a text. Then I added something darker. If I disappear, this will prove it wasn't my fault. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt necessary. Every day I opened the notebook, I stopped being the scared kid in the house and started becoming someone else. A recorder, a witness, a person who saw what adults did when they thought no one was watching. That night, I recorded a second clip. My face looked smaller than I remembered. My voice came out quieter. If you're seeing this, it means someone finally asked. I didn't cry on camera. I didn't need to. The silence behind me said enough. I saved it and locked the phone again. I started to understand something. This wasn't just about waiting for her to come home anymore. This was about what she would find when she did. I stared at the front door, half expecting her to walk in. But it stayed closed, just like it had for 5 straight days. I hovered over my best friend's name on my phone, Emma. I could have texted her, asked for help. But the shame clung to my fingers, so I sent a normal message instead. How's your trip? No reply. Maybe she was sitting around a campfire with her family. Maybe her fridge was full. Maybe nobody forgot her. That's when it clicked. This story wouldn't end when my mom came home. It would begin. Every can I couldn't open, every dry cereal handful, every night I slept with my phone under my pillow. Not to scroll, but to record in case something went wrong. All of it was now part of something bigger. I wasn't just alone anymore. I was collecting proof. By day 7, I could barely stand without holding on to the counter. But when the doorbell rang, I knew it wasn't just a sound. It was the shift I'd been waiting for. The doorbell rang twice, followed by 3 hard knocks. I froze. Nobody rang our doorbell. Not really. Kids knocked. Packages got dropped. But this was something different. My fingers still smelled faintly of cereal dust as I crept to the door and cracked it open. Standing there was a man in a green jacket, our school's logo stitched over the pocket. For a second, I didn't recognize him without a classroom behind him. "Hey, Riley," he said gently. "It's Mr. Dalton from school. Mind if I come in?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to lie, say I was fine, say my mom was just out, say something that would keep me in control. But my hand loosened on the doorknob and I stepped back. "I guess," I murmured. He walked in and scanned the room. His eyes landed on the empty fruit bowl, the sink full of dishes, the nearly bare counter. "Your parents at work?" he asked, like he was hoping that was the answer. "They're in Europe," I said, "for a month." His face changed. Not the way teachers look when you forget your homework. The way adults look when something's gone seriously wrong. "A month," he repeated. "And who's staying with you?" I didn't flinch. "No one," I said. "They said I was old enough." He pulled out a chair and sat down. His tone stayed soft, but his questions sharpened. "How long have you been alone?" "A week, almost." "Do you have enough food, money?" I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "They left a card that doesn't work, and $20. For a long moment, he didn't say anything, just sat there, processing what that meant. Not just emotionally, legally. "This isn't okay," he said at last. "You know that, right?" "They said I was mature, that I could handle it." He nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "Do you want help, Riley? Real help, not just food. The kind that makes sure this never happens again." I looked at him, at the word evidence still visible in my open notebook, at the empty shelves, at the screen on my phone with the last clip saved. "Yes," I said, "but if I say yes, what happens to them?" "They'll have to answer for their choices," he said calmly. "This won't be invisible anymore." Within an hour, he had made the call. Child protection was in motion. But the help didn't start with a stranger in a suit. It started with a neighbor who'd always been just across the grass. Mrs. Connors lived 3 houses down. She always waved when I rode my bike and gave out real chocolate on Halloween. I never imagined she'd be the one to carry my story forward. Mr. Dalton made the first call to her. Within minutes, she stepped through my door holding a reusable grocery bag like it was armor. She didn't ask why I hadn't come to her sooner. She already knew. She saw the color of my face, the hollow in my cheeks, the open notebook on the table, the cereal box with nothing left but air. "Oh, Riley," she said, not with pity, with quiet anger wrapped in care. I told her the truth, all of it, the $20, the silent phone, the credit card that was just decoration, the nights I whispered into my phone so I wouldn't forget what silence felt like. "I didn't want to look weak," I admitted. "They always tell me I'm mature, that I can handle things. I thought asking for help would mean proving them right." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Asking for help is not weakness," she said. "Sometimes it's how you make adults face what they've done." That sentence struck me like thunder. Make adults face what they've done. We sat down at the kitchen table, me, Mrs. Connors, and Mr. Dalton. Not as a broken kid and 2 rescuers, but as a team, a quiet coalition, a truth squad. Mr. Dalton nodded at the notebook. "Keep writing," he said. "Everything, what you felt, what you ate, what you tried, so they can't twist it later." My hand tightened around the pen. "So they can't say I'm exaggerating," I replied. He looked me dead in the eye. "You're allowed to protect yourself with the truth." I wrote that down too. The caseworker arrived an hour later. Clipboard, calm voice, eyes like a hawk. She walked the house, fridge, trash, card on the counter. "How long have they been gone?" 7 days, I said. "And who checks on you?" "No one, until today." She nodded, slowly. For the first time, someone was building a record that wasn't mine alone. That night, I packed a small bag and walked 3 houses over. It wasn't far, but it felt like crossing a border. Not just into a safer house, but into a world where I was finally visible. The first night at Mrs. Connors's house, I slept in a guest room that smelled like laundry soap and vanilla. I slept for almost 10 hours straight, not because I was safe yet, but because my body finally stopped bracing for something bad to happen. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was doing homework at her kitchen table. My mother's work number. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Mrs. Connors didn't rush me. She just said one thing calmly. "You don't have to take this alone." I answered and put it on speaker. "Riley," my mom snapped immediately. "What is going on? Why am I getting emails from child services? Why is your school involved? Do you have any idea what this looks like for me?" That was the moment I understood something important. She wasn't calling to ask if I was okay. She was calling to protect her image. "They're involved because you left me," I said quietly. "You went to Europe. You left me alone with $20 and a card that didn't work. They saw the house. They saw everything." She didn't pause. "You are exaggerating," she shot back. "There was food. And you're 11, not a baby. I trusted you. I can't believe you'd do this to us. Do you understand what this does to our reputation?" Mrs. Connors leaned closer to the phone. "This is Mrs. Connors. she said evenly. "I'm the neighbor who bought groceries because there was almost nothing left. This isn't about reputation, it's about safety." Silence crackled through the line. Then my mother inhaled sharply. "Why are you interfering? This is a family matter. Riley is fine." I looked down at my notebook, open to a page that read, "No calls for 7 days." "No," I said. "I wasn't fine." Her voice hardened. "We will deal with this when we get home, and we are going to have a serious conversation about consequences." The line went dead. Mrs. Connors reached over and flipped my phone face down. "She's right about one thing," she said softly. "There will be consequences. They just won't be yours." For the first time, I believed that. 2 days later, the caseworker returned with news that changed everything. My parents weren't staying in Europe. They were coming home early, and they had no idea what was waiting for them. They were supposed to be gone for a month. But 3 days after that phone call, the caseworker came to my school and pulled me from class. "Your parents have changed their return flight," she told me. "They'll be back this weekend." I knew why. They weren't racing home, because they missed me. They were coming back to manage the damage. "What happens when they arrive?" I asked. "We'll be meeting them at the house," she said. "You'll be there if you choose. Mr. Dalton will be present, and a supervisor from our department." I thought about hiding, letting the adults handle it, letting them walk into an empty room and figure out the rest. But that would have made everything I survived seem like a silent accident, like no one had ever seen it. "No," I said. "I want them to see me. I want them to see what they left behind." So we prepared. Not like actors learning lines, more like detectives building a case. The caseworker printed everything: my written statement, photos of the fridge, screenshots of my mom's posts from Europe, groceries receipts, call logs, transcripts from my notebook. The folder grew thick. The story was now undeniable. "This isn't about revenge," she reminded me gently. "It's about making sure you're never invisible again." I understood what she meant, but deep inside me, something else had taken shape. It wasn't rage, it was resolve. That Saturday, we returned to the house I hadn't stepped into for over a week. The air felt stale. Everything looked smaller. The caseworker placed the file on the kitchen table. I set my notebook next to it, open to the first page, evidence. My phone lay beside it, screen glowing with the paused video I'd recorded on day 3. A room once used to forget me had been transformed into a courtroom. Mr. Dalton stood near the counter, Mrs. Connors by the door. The department supervisor reviewed the documents in silence. Then we heard the car pull up. Laughter, rolling suitcases. A voice saying, "I just want a hot shower." My heart kicked once, not from fear but from finality. The front door clicked. The moment wasn't coming anymore. It was here. They walked in expecting a house that waited quietly for their return. Instead, they stepped into everything they chose to ignore. Organized, documented, and impossible to outrun. The suitcase wheels hit the tile. My mother stepped in first, sunglasses still on her head, like she was coming back from a photo shoot, not a month-long disappearance. My father followed, juggling bags, still talking about customs and jet lag. Then they saw us. The laughter snapped shut. My mom's eyes moved from the stranger at the table to Mr. Dalton, to Mrs. Connors by the doorway, and finally to me. "What is this?" she said, her voice sharp. "Why are all of you in my kitchen?" The supervisor stood slowly. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, I'm Ms. Vega with Child Protective Services. Please have a seat." We need to talk about the safety and welfare of your daughter." My mom didn't sit. She stared at me. "Riley, what did you tell them?" Old instincts flared in my chest. Shrink, apologize, spin the story. But then I looked at the phone beside me, the paused video. My own face staring back, thin, tired, determined. "I told them the truth," I said, calm, unmoving. My dad stepped forward with his politician voice. "There's been a misunderstanding. We left her with money, food, and a card. She's a mature 11-year-old, very capable. Kids are resilient." Miss Vega slid a paper across the table. "This is the activation record for your credit card," she said. "It was never set up. It failed multiple times when Riley attempted to use it." She turned another page. "These are photos taken a week into your trip. The food left behind was not adequate for a child alone. Some of it expired. There was no plan for supervision." My mom finally sat, her legs folding more than her pride. "That doesn't mean she was starving," she muttered. "We checked in." Ms. Vega flipped to another document. "This is your call and message log. One selfie, one message from the airport. No voice calls, no welfare check-ins." My father's face drained. My mother shook her head. "We trusted her," she snapped. "We needed a break. You don't understand what kind of stress we're under." I stepped forward. "You always tell people how hard you work," I said. "But when I was alone, hungry, scared, you didn't tell anyone about that." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The room did the heavy lifting. Mrs. Connors stepped forward, her arms crossed. "She was dizzy from hunger when I found her. She didn't ask for help because she thought needing help would disappoint you." My mother opened her mouth, closed it again. The supervisor leaned in. "Based on what we've gathered, leaving Riley alone under these conditions meets the legal definition of neglect. Effective immediately, she will remain in temporary care until the hearing." My mom's eyes welled. "Riley, please, we can fix this. Tell them you want to come home." I looked at her. "You always said actions have consequences," I said, "so I'm giving you yours." We didn't wait for them to argue. We left first this time, me, my notebook, and the adults who had finally chosen to see what they couldn't. We walked out of that house without looking back. My mom was crying. My dad was silent, staring at the kitchen like it had betrayed him. But the house hadn't changed. The fridge was still half empty. The notebook still said evidence. The videos still played the truth. They weren't grieving. They were cornered. At Mrs. Connor's house, the smell of dinner wrapped around me like armor. The guest room was already made up. My bag sat quietly by the bed, waiting for a life that didn't revolve around apology. That night, I recorded one final clip. "Day 7, I said softly into the phone. "But it's different now. I'm not in that house. I'm not waiting." I looked directly into the lens, imagining her watching it later. "You always said actions have consequences. Now it's your turn." Then I pressed save. The hearing came weeks later, a courtroom that smelled like carpet glue and printer ink. My parents sat at one table with their lawyer. I sat beside the caseworker and Mrs. Connors. My videos were entered into the record. My notes were scanned. I took the stand and told the story without raising my voice. I didn't need to. The facts were louder than I ever could be. The judge didn't yell. He didn't need to either. He read the ruling in calm, even tones. Temporary custody remained with the state. Supervised visits only. Mandatory parenting classes, psych evaluations. They didn't go to jail. This wasn't a movie. But they lost the thing they'd taken for granted, the automatic right to call themselves my guardians. My mom sends messages now, long paragraphs about change and regret. She says things like, "We can rebuild, and this doesn't define us." But I know the truth. This story didn't break our family. It revealed what was already broken. Mrs. Connors never made me feel like I owed her anything. She just made dinner. She taught me how to sauté vegetables and shop with a list. She left the porch light on every night. That was enough. One afternoon, she told me something I never forgot. "You didn't ruin your family, Riley. You just stopped hiding the evidence." The day my parents came back from Europe, they expected a month of stories and souvenirs. Instead, they walked into a house where every silence, every empty shelf, every unanswered call had become proof. The summer I was left alone didn't end with screaming or sirens. It ended with receipts. The kind you save, not to return a product, but to prove a point. I still have the notebook. I still have the clips. Sometimes I watch them, not to relive the worst days, but to remember the moment I stopped surviving and started recording. That was the shift. I used to think protection came from being quiet, obedient, invisible. Now I know. Silence is how stories disappear. Telling the truth isn't just survival, it's strategy. She thought silence made me obedient. I used that silence to build a record. And when the world finally looked, it didn't hear a scream. It saw the truth. And it did something about it. The $20 is still folded in the back of my notebook. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me what not to believe. Some people hand you neglect and call it trust. I keep the proof, not the promise. If you've ever been left to figure it out alone, or had to prove your truth in silence, I see you. Leave a comment, share your story. Let them know they're not the only ones being watched.